This is VSiN By The Books on VSiN, the sports betting network.
We begin the Thursday edition. It is VSiN By The Books. Dave Ross here, Circus Sports Fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Our closer, Jensen Lewis, back home in the land, Cleveland, Ohio. How are we on this Thursday as we get 1 week away from the NFL draft today?
A lot of people in Cleveland, this is, I tell you, overreaction month in baseball in April. This is overreaction week. The Browns all of a sudden will find who they need to go to the Super Bowl. They start printing tickets to be able to go wherever it is each year. And then all of a sudden they start 0-2 and the season's over. So we're right on schedule here, DR, for the greatest over-exaggerations, the best shape of their life. We're getting those videos now of draft prospects that are squatting 1 million pounds and benching 500, and nobody cares. No. Just throwing it out there. Let's get the pick in. Let's start to see some of the news leak, which I think we got a little bit of yesterday. We'll get some more over the weekend, and it's also those 7 days where the sportsbooks are like, can we just be done? Can we be done with it, please?
To that point, we will have the great Mike Palm in studio today. We'll figure out exactly when Circa is going to put those up out here in Las Vegas. They won't be out for very long. They are out there, depending on your jurisdiction. You can fire on some of these, and I know you have, Jensen, so we'll get to some of your picks here a little bit later on in the program. Of course, it's not my team. It's not your team. It's America's team. We'll break down the Cowboys draft. That's going to be coming up later on this show today. Again, Mike will be in studio. Rachel Dory is going to join us to break down the NHL playoffs. She's created her own model, so we'll get to those numbers that she sees. And Zach Giddings is going to join us to break down the Niners, yes, San Francisco, and see what their draft prospects look like. So again, we started this on Monday. We will go through every single team in the NFL. So, yes, your team will be covered as well to tell you where we think they might go, where their prospects are, if there's some bettable numbers now before you get to the draft. Some people like to wait, see what the draft looks like. Will it really affect that season? Ask Jaden Daniels and the Commanders last year. Ask C.J. Stroud 2 years ago. It can make all the difference in the world what happens next Thursday night in Green Bay. To that end, we have to begin the program today with our highlights and headlines.
Help your bottom line with today's highlights and headlines.
Remember a couple days ago when Nico was going to go pro because it looked like the NIL deals weren't going to work out? And went, no. Iamaleava is going to be in UCLA, going to be a Bruin. So Nico finally has landed somewhere. And this, of course, after the NIL talks has really dominated college football in the discussion here in the last 48 hours. So what do we make of this news? Was it more so that it was just the right deal and it wasn't about the NFL? Because we thought, hey, Josh Heupel was like, hey, if you don't want to get $4 million, we're not going to give you $4 million. If our deal is not good enough for you, see you later. He left. And then kind of Tulane was on the board here, and UCLA becomes the last team standing, it sounds like. But for all it's worth, he's going out west out here to Los Angeles.
Yeah, welcome to the Big Ten, and welcome to a place where no one will really think about you. And so I think the bigger headline is no one was paying him anywhere close to $4 million. And it sounds like, Dave, no one was even going to compensate him for what he was getting already at Tennessee. And so I think that's the largest story to come out of where this destination ultimately ends up. Does he have success there? Maybe. Is he someone that's going to improve? Who knows? The problem is he's only going to be remembered, at least in the short term, for really messing up this whole process, whether it was the people who advised him, whether it was his own decision. We're getting reports now that he had missed multiple practices throughout the year. Not being a team leader is pretty indicative, I think, for any head coach to be like, all right, I think we're going to have to move on here because, as Josh Heupel has said, at least within Tennessee, no one's bigger than the program. And for a guy, if these reports are true, and you know, when you have teammates that are kind of already moving on, posting pictures on Instagram of backup quarterbacks and looking ahead to the future, you get a pretty good sense, right? You know, the players are going to tell you exactly what was going on one way or another. And I think we're getting the truth starting to come out.
And this will be interesting just to see the eyes that are on him, if they're on him at UCLA, because I think you made a good point there. Does it kind of disappear out there? And their camp, Nico's camp, is saying it wasn't about the money. Come on. They say it was about Josh Heupel's offense. Really? Like, look, you can tell a story. It doesn't have to make it true. So if Nico said this had nothing to do with the money, no. Well, then why were you asking for more money? Because it sounds like if they were going to give you more money, you would have stayed at Tennessee. Now it's about Josh Heupel's offense. Wow. Mm-hmm. So this saga, at least for now, is finally over with Nico. He lands at UCLA. We wish him well. I'll be very interested to see how it plays out there in Los Angeles. Mentioning the NFL draft next Thursday night here, it's going to be in Green Bay. And people are like, why are you going to take the draft to Green Bay? They never give them a Super Bowl, right? So this is kind of like their Super Bowl because this is as good as it gets if it's not an NFC title game for Packer backers. Now we know an 18th player has been added to this room. It's cornerback Maxwell Hairston. He's going to be there from Kentucky. So he's accepted that invite to go to the NFL draft. And, I'm listening to some NFL Network yesterday and on SiriusXM. They do a great job there as well. And they do say that you can, if you want to look at the betting markets and make it actionable, that, this is normally a pretty good indication that you got 18 guys now in that first-round room, you believe, that there's a higher propensity they will go in the first round, or else they wouldn't be there. Do you read into that when a player this late, a week late, says, I'll show up because I don't want to go there and sit there if I'm not going to be drafted in the first round?
Okay, so looking at some big boards here, we obviously know Ashton Johnson is going to be the number one running back. Omarion Hampton has been in there, mentioned as maybe the second one, or at least a candidate for that. Travion Henderson, who I think from a system fit actually is pretty attractive to a lot of these teams that are looking for a running back in the first round. I've seen a couple of mocks where the highest that Maxwell Harrison is 36 to the Jaguars, which puts him in round 2.
Right.
Okay, just to get that out there. Now that is just a handful of picks away from the bottom of the first round. All that being said, we talked a lot yesterday. We've talked a lot this week about where's that point, at least middle of the first round, where teams will start to look to maybe trade back in or trade up. What are they doing it for? And so that's what I think we get maybe a small indicator for, Dave, is that the running back room might be a bit more attractive to certain teams this year. Or it is some of those smoke and mirrors of like you're showing someone one way and you're trying to go another. So, hey, bottom line, always great to be invited. You want to be there in the experience. A guy with a name that is not as well recognized for people in the mainstream as some of these other big names in the running back room. So congrats to him and his family. Very anxious now because you just don't do it to do it, right? We're just not handing out, hey, come on over. You guys can watch the draft in the green room and we'll see what happens. So, I think there's something to this. Very anxious to see how this really percolates on Monday and Tuesday.
I will say this. They're for the market right now for corners to be selected in the first round. Over 4.5, you can get plus money, plus 215. The under right now, minus 295. So again, doesn't mean that necessarily this is the way it's going to go. But when you get added late here as the 18th pick, he will be in there now. So I've been getting a lot of late first round buzz, maybe from the Rams, from the Packers, even the Chiefs now being linked to him. So we'll see if he does slide into that first round. Even the projections maybe play the under in that 36.5. To that end. Let's get to some of your picks because we talked about it yesterday here, Jensen. You've already been able to fire out there in the great city of Cleveland. What did you add from our show yesterday to today?
All right, so I know we're going to talk New Orleans Saints coming up here, so I'll save my Shedeur Sanders a little evaluation coming up. But I do like the under 8.5 at plus 240 there for him. And we can kind of explain coming up here in our next segment. Listen, we talked with John Daigle yesterday. Tyler Warren, right where Carolina was, and looking at potentially at 8 if a couple of guys in front of them have gone that they had targeted. What did he say? 16-1, kind of the exacta right there that he would be in there. So I love the value under 9.5 plus 185. And I realize that puts him right at 10, where a lot of mocks have Tyler Warren going to the Bears at 10. All that being said, a lot of things I think will start to happen there after pick number 4 or 5. I know John had said he believes that the draft does start at 6 with the Raiders, but I do like an opportunity at plus money for that. Calvin Banks Jr., one of the top offensive tackles. We talked a lot about Will Campbell and what he means to a team that could acquire him. Of course, Jacksonville going to be one of those first teams on the board that will look for offensive line help. Maybe, New England at 4, but it sounds like they want more defensive if they're going on the line there. Armin Membu, someone that the Jets have definitely targeted, so I do like him. Matthew Golden, we talked about wide receivers yesterday, my man, and I did target your team. If it's not Ted McMillan, is it Matthew Golden opposite of CeeDee Lamb? They're in Big D. And also, is this a point too where the Dolphins at 13 are they still going to look for offensive line help, or do they go back to the offense and potentially a trade where Tyreek Hill goes out of town? They've got to replace him. Is it the Cardinals at 16 potentially looking for another wide receiver outside of Marvin Harrison too? So a lot there, and obviously a lot more, as I mentioned, Amari and Hampton in that running back room. Jack Campbell, linebacker from Alabama. I know a lot of these unders. I just think the plus money value, and knowing we're going to have some volatility here in the middle of the first round, I love where some of these numbers are at.
Yeah, and I like those two picks that you made there. Golden under 17.5 at $1.15 for the reasons that you gave. I do think the Cowboys could be in play at 12. And if not, I think once that receiver run, where it's going to go, I would be surprised if he lasts past the 17th pick. And the Omarion Hampton pick, also at under 19.5 at plus money, I think it's a sneaky good play there. I also think the Cowboys could be in play for him. You think somebody's been studying the Cowboy draft? Maybe Hampton would be a thought process there at 12 as well. So I like that at plus money, plus $1.45. Let's get into it. And we're going to break down 3 teams today. We'll start with the New Orleans Saints next. They're on the clock for us right here at VSiN By The Books.
VSiN By The Books, right here on VSiN.
We are back, VSiN By The Books. Dave Ross here at Circus Sports Fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. We're going to break down 4 teams in the NFL draft today. 4, beginning with the Saints today at number 9. So we're going to go through, let me see here. We're going to go through, the Cowboys are at 12. So we'll get through the Saints at 9, the Bears at 10, the Niners at 11, and the Cowboys at 12. So we're going to do this so we can get through all the teams before we get to next Thursday's draft, which, of course, will be in Green Bay. Very quickly, do want to recap what happened last night in the NBA playoffs, play-in, to try to get into the NBA playoffs. The Bulls, very disappointing, 109-90 loss at home to the Heat. So the Heat keep their dreams alive. And the Mavericks as well. They get a nice win on the road. I know Jensen had talked about the Mavs yesterday, 120-106 over Sacramento. So the Mavericks keeping their faint hopes alive as well of moving on into the NBA postseason. But the Saints, Jensen, I know you've got to play in Shedeur Sanders, and we'll get to that. But when you look at this team, it's the longest of long shots right now. The news of Derek Carr coming out and that he's not going to be available potentially for the entire season, obviously, with that shoulder injury. That news coming out when it has, a week before the draft now. That really seemed to throw some kinks in the plans there, and that maybe all of a sudden, if Shedeur Sanders was not in play here, that he could be here at 9. You look at the win total, 6.5, juiced heavily to the under, $1.50, 10-1 to win the division, 90-1, the worst conference odds that you're going to find for any team out there in either conference. Woof. I mean, Jensen, what do we make of the Saints, and what do we make of them at 9?
Yeah, and so that to me was still, as I told you last week, I cannot believe that news would get out, or whoever allowed it to get out, if it was within, the Saints front office or personnel there, or if it was Derek Carr. Like, I think that it's mutually beneficial to try and keep that in-house. It doesn't sound like Derek Carr would be a guy to scuttle the Saints, knowing that he's still under contract there. All right, here's the big thing. There's still a lot of needs, right, for the Saints. And you look at not only a quarterback now that we have the injury news, but offensive line, cornerback actually in the defensive end. Wide receiver room was absolutely decimated last year. And so lots of different ways to go. My play on Shedeur Sanders was a lot more predicated on, it's not just the Saints that are involved, but it is kind of that dynamic of if the Raiders are sitting there too and wondering, all right, do we dangle? You kind of made mention of it yesterday. Do the Raiders, if they're not sold on Ashton Jonty, is it going to be, an Armin Membu to get that line even more bolstered for Geno Smith? Is that the opportunity there then to dangle it for the Saints to have to jump up and be able to get the guy that they want? Not that the Jets would take Shedeur, and we obviously know that Carolina not involved in the quarterback search at the moment. So it was more a play on, okay, we've got an opportunity if the Saints need to move up because they know they need to get one now, but the rest of the league does know that. So where is that middle ground? And if it does happen, great. The other one, too, is the outlier, right? We're still thinking that if it is chalk at the top with, the Browns taking Travis Hunter and the Giants taking Abdul Carter, it's still not that set in stone here. Okay. And there's still a reason why you brought in some guys to, as the Giants have, do their due diligence. Not saying that Shedeur would go at 3. But I still feel at that price at plus 240, I get multiple chances of a couple of teams that might want to pull the trigger. Absolutely take a shot on that, especially with what the Saints need right now.
Yeah, at under 8.5 at plus 240, you've got multiple outs here, right? Even as high potentially of the Giants at 3. I don't. You would know this too, certainly in Cleveland. I mean, maybe it's still an outside shot that they're playing games there, but it feels like could be in play. Obviously, with that workout, by the way, that's scheduled for today. Today, Shedeur is supposed to work out privately with the Giants. So we'll see if we get any tea leaves from that come showtime tomorrow. But certainly he could be live for the Raiders at 6 if they don't go running back with Jensen and or offensive line, as you mentioned. Right? The Jets could be a wild card. I mean, they do technically, if you look at it and say, well, we feel like we've got our quarterback now, but do you? When it's only a 2-year deal, like we still don't know, right? If Justin Fields is the long-term guy there, it doesn't feel like Shedeur would be a fit there. But 8, and that's Dan Morgan, the GM there for the Panthers. And again, has said he's on record, like we're open for all, which is every GM's kind of line at this time of year, right? We're open for all possibilities, i.e., and he did say they're not opposed to trading out if you want to call ahead to try to get a Shedeur Sanders if he's really potentially live at 9. So I think you've got multiple outs to possibly get that home. And it does feel like Shedeur is the biggest wild card of all. But if you are the Saints and you say, well, if Derek is not going to be able to go this year, and maybe we pull the plug in the whole experiment, it was failed from the onset, bringing him over from the Raiders. I mean, if it's not this great quarterback class, do they pass on Shedeur if he's there at 9? Like, if he's there at 9, does that then change the complexion of their draft and say, well, we didn't expect him to be here, but since he is, we do have to look at Shedeur at 9.
Yeah, they definitely have to, because I think that is more of where Kellen Moore feels like he wants to be married to his quarterback of the future, right? I mean, obviously the head coach, you don't bring in Kellen Moore unless you're looking to make a dynamic change. And that was even with the healthy Derek Carr, right? I think that was where ownership was looking at. We obviously need to change things up from a defensive mind here the last handful of years. Let's get back on the offensive side, especially in a division where we don't think, Dave, I think you and I agree, it's not like the Bucs are running away with this thing, or the Falcons under Michael Penix Jr. are just going to go win 11 games and a cloud of dust. So I do believe that there are opportunities here, and that's just the top 10. Remember, you gave the prop yesterday. What is it, 2.5 quarterbacks in the first round, or 2.5 quarterbacks in the top 10? There's some different books. Yeah, in the round. Okay, so I think that there are opportunities, and I know Jackson Dart is going to be a guy that is going to be talked about a lot here. Heck, we've heard a bit more about Tyler Shuck. We've heard about Kyle McCord as early as yesterday. Not that Kyle McCord is going to be a first-round pick, but the fact that you're now starting to get a little bit more of the fire hose of news and speculation going. We're about at that time, right?
Yeah, we are.
Where a lot of news is going to start to percolate. But I would say, Charles Davis, one of the more respected guys in our league, he's got him as high as still as number 3. And so when you've got a delineation there, I know a couple of draft experts have Shedeur all the way down into the 20s. that being said, like start telling me where in the 20s. We know that the Broncos are not going to be it. The Steelers would be your one team if they believe that Shador's the guy. Then they find a way to take him there. The Chargers don't need one. The Packers don't need one. The Vikings don't need one. The Texans don't need one. The Rams. I mean, do we feel like Sean McVay believes in a Shador Sanders? It just did not jump off the page to me right away. And so I just don't know if he slides that far. I can't see that happening here, Dave, knowing the teams that are in front of them.
I will say this, at DraftKings right now, which team will Shador Sanders be drafted by? The Saints are the favorites at plus $1.25. They're number one on the board. So that's interesting, potentially to be slated there, and we're assuming that would be at 9. Again, maybe you could trade down still. The Saints could still get their guy if it's a little bit later, according to some of those draft mocks, rather. Here's the thing that really surprises me. You ready for this? At DraftKings, which team will Ashton Jeanty be drafted by? The Saints. The Saints are the 4th betting choice.
Wow.
So the usual suspects, if you will, the Raiders are the favorites here for Jeanty to go. The Bears, we would assume at 10. You would think that makes sense. Jacksonville, a little bit surprised there with 18. It's the Saints at 12-1 as the 4th betting choice. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily mean, remember, all those teams I just mentioned, those are all top 10 picks. Mm-hmm. So do that draft correlation with Ashton if he's going to be a top 10 pick. According to at least DraftKings' numbers, it's telling you he will be that. Even the Patriots are the 5th betting choice there. These are all first-round picks. The first one are top 10 picks. The only one that's not are the Cowboys that are sitting there at 12th in the draft, and they are the 6th betting choice there. So I just wonder if I don't think that Jeanty is going to be there and or Shador is there. But if you're the Saints at 9 and both those guys fall to you, that would be an interesting decision to make. I would think they'd go quarterback over running back when you still have Kamara, right? That would seem to make more sense. But isn't that interesting that the odds market is saying the Saints are the favorites to take Shador?
Well, and even more so to that, if Jeanty and Shador are there and they take Shador, now the Bears have a real tough decision at 10. If Jeanty's still on the board, he's there, so
you would think they'd have to take him, right?
Absolutely. And I'll throw one other thing out there because we did hear the news yesterday, or at least the rumor being put out there, that the Raiders are so enamored with Armin Membu there from Missouri.
Yeah.
Posturing beyond that reeked of posturing to me, just to see if people wanted to come up, especially the Jets at 7. I know it's just a flip-flop there, but hey, if the Jets are really sold on offensive line help, we've seen teams do what they have to do just to go up one spot to be able to get the guy that they want.
Fascinating. This is exactly that time of the year, and it's going to be a wild week before we get to Green Bay next Thursday. You want to get in on the ponies, you can do so right now at firstbet.com. That's the number one stbet.com. Use the promo code VSiN200. You're going to score a 20% rebate on all of your wagers for the first 60 days. That's up to $200, so don't miss out on all the horse racing action. Sign up today at firstbet.com. When we come back, it is time for the Daily Diamond.
You're tuned in to VSiN By The Books, right here on VSiN.
We are back, VSiN By The Books on this Thursday edition. Dave Ross and Jensen Lewis. We'll get to some golf talk a little bit later on in the program. RBC Heritage getting ready to get underway this morning here. I'll just say this, Jensen. Is checking the boards, walked out during the break here, and the big Swede's dropping like a fly. I don't get it.
Really?
Yeah, plus 1750 now before he tees off.
Whoa, okay.
What am I missing?
Something to keep in mind.
He was 12-1. He's almost 18-1. So we'll chart those numbers as we get ready for that first round action today. Remember, it is an elevated event here on the PGA Tour. Odd that they do that right after the Augusta National, but I'm not the commissioner, so it's right back. We fire it back up with the signature event here on the tour. But today and every day, we always like to celebrate baseball with our edition of the Daily Diamond. Jensen, I got excited yesterday. The Reds were down 5-0, made a charge with 3 in the bottom of the 7th, had runners in the corners, down 3. I thought maybe they might tie it up right here. 1 out in the double play. Lose 5-3. But maybe today there's hope for the Redlegs.
You can just singer it from the rooftops. All right, that's my first one for today. That, of course, channeling our Brady Singer. If you're a Reds fan out there, Reds are undefeated, 3-0 in all 3 starts by Brady Singer this year. But more importantly, you mentioned the offense. It's been stymied by this Mariner pitching staff thus far this series. How about averaging almost 11 runs of support in those 3 starts? I think we feel pretty good. The Reds can avoid the sweep today. So a big one on getaway day here for the Mariners to try and get it across the line. But the Reds feeling pretty good with one of their aces on the mound.
You know, it's so funny because I like to look, and I'm looking at the William Hill app right now as we're having this conversation. They don't have the numbers up for the win totals. But remember, I'm sitting on 78.5. That's my favorite play in the offseason. And before we even got to the beginning of the year, that had gone up as high as 81.5, 82.5. Maybe they were watching our show, Jensen, for the last couple months leading up to baseball. Then it went all the way back down to 78.5 after the slow start. So with the Reds back at 500, I wonder what those new numbers will look like. But I'll be rooting for Singer, and I will be singing it from the rooftops today. Is this a Jim Nantz play that you have for the next one?
Yes. Hello, old friends. But it is a little more of a weird dynamic. So the New York Yankees spring training home, Dave, as you know, is in Tampa at George Steinbrenner Field. They will be playing a quote unquote road series against the Tampa Bay Rays, as we know, who will be playing their home games there this season. So it'd be a little weird to see that. The problem is the power outage. Okay. That's what's happened when they've gone on the road this year. Now I bring that up because, as we well know, George Steinbrenner Field, exact dimensions of Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. So you see that number entering play yesterday, 28 home runs at home for the Yanks. So they may feel a bit more at home away from home with these old friends.
I like that. And again, bachelor party, Chris Seibert, my boy, had a stretch limo. That Jensen, I swear, the looks on the people's faces when over the PA you hear, Chris Seibert, your ride has arrived, and this huge stretch limo is there to pick up us deviants at that point in our lives, much younger. I love George Steinbrenner Field. It is a fun field down there. Road Warriors. What are we going with? Hawk and Animal today with the WWE in town this weekend here in Vegas?
Yeah, not exactly. However, let's highlight some people and some teams that have done quite well away from home this year. Let's start with a guy that maybe a lot of people don't know, Tyler Soderstrom, who is leading the world in home runs away from Sacramento. Again, the A's have their getaway day game against the White Sox this afternoon. Most RBI, Wilmer Flores collecting a couple of more yesterday as the Giants pace the Phillies. Giants are for real, man.
Wow.
And Wilmer Flores, an immensely important part of their fast start. How about team ERA? The Royals, they didn't get it done yesterday. Aaron Judge, a late home run to beat Kansas City, but overall they have pitched really, really well. Second in team ERA away from Kauffman Stadium, good for third in Major League Baseball. Could see some unders, another great pitching staff. They'll be in Detroit beginning today for a 4-game set. And then the Angels, again, first in the American League in road wins. Did not have that on my bingo card to start the season. They finish up their series against the Rangers. Remember, we said yesterday, both those teams have had a share of first place in the American League West. One of them has been in first since March 28th. And the Rangers, by virtue of their win yesterday, sole possession of first right now out west.
It is fascinating. Again, if you know what I'm talking about, tell them, Hawk. With the Road Warriors back in WWF. They were the WWF back then in those days. WWE, by the way, Jensen, is in town here in Las Vegas. And as I'm driving here this morning and I go by Allegiant Stadium, they've got the big SmackDown is going to be on Friday night there. And then they're going to have, I believe it's going to be WrestleMania 41 on Saturday and Sunday. So, then they're going to have the WWE Hall of Fame ceremony. That's going to be on Friday as well. So it's a big weekend for them here in Vegas. As a baseball guy, were you guys also wrestling fans back in the day? Was there any of that chatter in the clubhouses?
Well, if there was, it was really limited. I'm trying to think what was. I don't know.
There wouldn't be anything like you guys all got together and like, we got to go watch this wrestler.
No, I mean, if there was, it was very secluded. It was a secret society back in the day that probably had those viewing parties for sure.
I once spotted Ric Flair at my gym in Virginia Beach I think I was 15. And I news for the Nature Boy, if he couldn't lift the weight, I wasn't going to be able to help him. But it was like moral support that I was there. One more, Nate. I didn't say Nate. I said Mr. Flair. Edge Boost right now, it's the first ever bank account that's built just for bettors. It ensures all your gambling transactions are always approved, no usage fees, no minimums, earn cashback rewards, 100% approval for all betting deposits. Sign up today at edgeboost.bet. Use the promo code BOOK. That's the name of the show, of course. Deposit $25, and Edge Boost will match that deposit. That's edgeboost.bet. They used to come through. I used to work at a Waring's gym growing up in Virginia Beach, Jensen, and the wrestlers would all come into town, go to the Norfolk Scope back in the day, and I was there. It was Nature Boy Ric Flair. It was Ivan Koloff, Nikita Koloff, and I went up to the leg press machine, and I see Nikita Koloff is doing his thing in the mirror, and Ivan's on the leg press, and I'm 15, Jensen, and about 78 pounds soaking wet, and I said hello, and he grunts at me. He goes, huh, and I see the Russian sickle on his arm. And I go back down to Bobby Waring, the owner, and I go, Bobby, that's Ivan Koloff. He goes, yeah. And I go, is he from Russia? He goes, no, Minnesota. That's the first time that I started to realize that not everything I saw was real. That maybe wrestling was not all that I thought it was cracked up to be at 15. They hooked me in. I was so gullible.
Yeah, speaking of being hooked in, shout out to Dan Yarosh. Hopefully I'm saying it right. Big fan of VSiN. He had tweeted at Mitch Moss yesterday. It was at BWI. Speaking of Norfolk, right over in your neck of the woods there. We were on the tube over there, which was great. He posted a picture that was awesome to see. So thanks to Dan. A great day. We've been all over a lot of different airports thus far.
Apparently, you and I are big in airports. I don't know if that's a new thing now, but apparently...
We are the new CNN. We're the new CNN airport.
We keep showing up at airports. Hey, I want to ask you a little bit more about Brady Singer, as you mentioned today, against the Mariners, how they've got a perfect record in his starts. Total sitting at 8. It is juiced to the over, $1.12. Reds, it feels like a nice price for me at $1.05 here. M's are favored at $1.15. Would you look to the Reds here at the $1.05 price, or get a little bit frisky and look for maybe some adjusted prices here and lay on the run line here?
Yeah, it's a great question. Just kind of looking at the early numbers here, and until we have lineups, it's kind of an intriguing little split here. 53% of the bets, 79% of the handle on the $1.05 there for the Reds. 47% of bets, 21% of handle for the Mariners. Again, you look at certain times where, for whatever reason, out of the chute, offenses really get going with a certain starting pitcher on the mound. I think you ride the highs here, Dave, but no official play just yet. As I said, want to see some lineups and see on getaway day who the Mariners are going to have out there as well. But no denying that Brady Singer has been phenomenal thus far in his young tenure with the Cincinnati Reds.
Okay, let me just ask this very quickly before we get a break. The White Sox right now are 4-13. The Rockies lose again. They have the worst record in baseball at 3-15.
Mm-hmm.
The Braves lose again. They are now 5-13. After losing the last 2 against Toronto. Jensen, I know it's 18 games in, it's 162, but this exercise of waiting on the Braves to turn this around, is this the ultimate, Lucy in the football with Charlie Brown, and we're just going to keep kicking, and she's just going to keep pulling the football away from us? When are the Braves going to wake up?
Yeah, 19 strikeouts by their offense yesterday. Not good.
Goodness.
First time in franchise history that they had their number 1 and number 2 hitters strike out 8 or more times. That was Michael Harris II and Austin Riley. If you'd like, Dave, the Braves are 45-1 at DraftKings worst record. 45-1. That's come down from, I think, 200 to 250-1 before the season.
Okay, now all I'd say, I'm not taking that. There's no way I'm betting that. I will say this though, they're still plus 310 to win the East.
Yeah.
That's the crazy part to me. I'm not saying Scotty Scheffler numbers, but we're not getting the fair market value for this terrible start, right?
There is no better time. I mean, even to make the playoffs, Dave.
Oh my!
Atlanta's $1.35. There's no better time to jump on them than now.
I can't do it. I just can't pull.
You're a Mets fan,
I
so
can't
you
do
never
it.
would.
I'm holding back. When we come back, what about those Bears in Chicago? What are they going to do at 10? They're on the clock next here at VSiN By The Books.
You're tuned in to VSiN By The Books, right here on VSiN.
We are back. VSiN By The Books. Dave Ross, Jensen Lewis here. The draft is next week. Cannot believe it. 1 week away here in Green Bay. And again, free agency, numbers have been up now, win totals, that sort of thing. I wonder how much they'll change, Jensen, overall. And, you know, there will be some changes depending on what surprises we might get. Because the hardest thing, we'll have Mike Palm in studio too, and we'll talk about this with Mike. The hardest thing for the books right now is to do exactly the exercise that we've been doing all week, that we will continue to do all week, and next week as well, is figure out which team's going to go where. And, you know, normally it's the quarterback that's going to switch the fortunes of a team, right? We saw it with Jaden Daniels. We saw it with C.J. Stroud 2 years ago. Those are the two greatest examples that we can give right now of literally flipping your fortunes from one draft to the next season. Now, the Bears, they're sitting at 10. And now I think in Chicago, with Ben Johnson there now, no disrespect to Matt Eberflus, but it feels like with the offensive weapons they drafted a year ago. Remember Rome Odunze to go along with Caleb Williams in the top 10 just last year. And then 2 years ago, you trade out of that spot, the number one pick, so you can get DJ Moore, right? So they've accumulated a lot of offensive talent. Maybe Matt Eberflus wasn't the right guy to utilize that. Now I feel like they feel they've got the right guy at the helm in Ben Johnson to use these weapons. So now when you're sitting at 10, is the last piece of that offensive puzzle Ashton Jeanty coming out of Boise State? Or do you think, well, no, really defensively, we could still use some help here? Because you look at the needs, it is D-line. Of course, that running back is glaring, but then it's safety. Everybody could use offensive line. They've done a lot of work in the offseason, the offensive line, investing in free agency. And then tight end is interesting because that's where the Tylen Warren potentially at 10 could be. Win total sitting at 8.5. Juice to the under at $1.30. To win the North, it's plus 425 today. Jensen, when you take that big view of what's happened there in the last couple of years and what it might look like now with Ben Johnson, where do you think their inclination could be at 10?
All right, so let's take your defense idea. I think we believe that Mason Graham out of Michigan will be that first defensive lineman, and it could be as early, as the top 5, and depending on if the Patriots and Mike Vrabel kind of stay in that defensive mindset, then he goes as early as 4. I'm not sure that the Giants take him at 3, knowing that you could have one of Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter available there. So let's assume that Graham goes at 4. The next guy, at least on some big boards, or the next couple of guys, Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss and Derek Harmon out of Oregon. And even you could throw in, I think, Mason Graham's teammate, Kenneth Grant from Michigan as well. Those are the next 3 that you get. Is that enough? And are they worth that spend at 10? If the answer is no, and I know there's a lot of mocks we talked about earlier in the week and again this morning, Tyler Warren has been consistently positioned there at 10, thus kind of why I like the under there with maybe Carolina jumping up to grab him in front of Chicago. Let's say that it's Tyler Warren at 10. I'm more intrigued now at what happens in round 2. They've got 2 picks, okay? And kind of understanding, where you look at 39 and 41. Do you use one to spend to get back into round 1 if there's someone you like, or do you stand pat? There's a couple of mocks, speaking of the Ashton Jeanty angle. Caleb Johnson is actually mocked at them. Running back from Iowa, plenty of run, literally. And also they have Ariante Ursary, offensive tackle out of Minnesota. So you get 3 guys that address 3 needs right away. And Tyler Warren outside of Cole Kmet, and knowing where that Bears offense is DeAndre Swift the answer? At least in the short term, you could do a lot worse. Right? Roshan Johnson had to step in for injuries last year. DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Tyler Warren, Cole Kmet. Okay, now you allow Caleb Williams to kind of use a little bit of his running ability too. I'm just kind of angry. I think they probably have to wait to see the domino effect of what happens with the Raiders at 6, and if the Saints in front of them try to jump up and grab the person that they want. And if Carolina is serious about sliding back, if you're the Bears, do you need to slide up to get anybody? Very intriguing spot here at 10, but you're right. Couple of different ways for them to attack.
Now, again, you go to DraftKings right now. Jeanty is the favorite to be drafted by the Raiders. We would think theoretically at 6 in this model at minus $1.25. Bears are the second betting choice. Again, Genty then at 10 at plus 230. Jags, who are drafting much higher, they're the third betting choice here at 5-1 with the fifth overall pick. But here's where it gets interesting to me, is that if Genty and it follows form and the Raiders take him off the board and the Bears are still there at 10 and now he's gone, the second betting choice right now, the third betting choice right now to draft Tyler Warren is the Bears at plus 350. But look at the other two teams ahead of them in the odds market. It's the Colts at plus 160 as the favorites to draft Warren. The Colts don't draft till 14th, Jensen. That surprises me. Now, you mentioned the Jets. They're at plus 280 as the second betting choice ahead of the Bears to get Warren. So if Ashton's off the board and we're going, to me, it's all about, are we helping Caleb Williams? What helps him more? Is it a three-down back, or is it a tight end that they go, man, you saw what we saw with Bowers last year out here in the desert with the Raiders. Really, it's the tight end that could be that guy. Because the knock so far on Caleb has been, you heard a little bit from Keenan and maybe DJ Moore a little bit. The timing plays are not there. It's more kind of street ball, USC, let me go make a play, but everything's off schedule. If you get a tight end that can be your security blanket to get you on schedule, is that more important than the running back theoretically?
Well, and thinking about what Ben Johnson really liked to deploy, and his assets far different, right? With Sam Laporta,
sure.
There in Detroit, and boy, when you have Amon-Ra St. Brown on one side and Jameson Williams on the other, life is pretty easy. Okay, so to your idea, I think. Okay, we don't really have a Sonic and Knuckles there. Let's assume it's Jonty. Do you have Jonty and DeAndre Swift as your Chicago edition of Sonic and Knuckles? Probably not, right?
Right.
This is a passing league. You're looking at the division. Detroit is going to get healthy again and kind of revamp. The Vikings are in a kind of a captivating spot now. And then the Packers defense, we know, is going to be very solid. NFC North, you're going to have to be able to run the ball. You're going to have to be able to move the line of scrimmage. Would you rather err on the side of you're going to have to run the football to beat one of those teams to get into the just thinking down the line here? You can run the football like Detroit did. You're still going to be able to kind of handle any subpar passing days. If the Bears can't run the ball, are you comfortable with Caleb Williams being able to beat you down the field throwing in subpar conditions? I'm not.
Here's what's fascinating, too. If you go to the draft prop by team and you go to the Bears, and I mentioned that you could look at whether or not Tyler Warren is drafted by the Bears, that's plus 350. That is the same price point that the first drafted player by Chicago is a tight end. It's the fourth option. But that screams one guy, right?
Yes.
But running back, if you want to go with that prop, how about this for value? If you really think Genty 1 could be there, he's plus 225. But let's say he's gone at 6. That's the number one betting choice that the Bears draft any running back at 10. So, I know you're looking at some running backs down the board a little bit. If Ashton's already gone, and yet the betting market says running back is the position and maybe they trade down, but the position is still running back here. That's where you can get to 2-3 running backs potentially drafted in the first round if the Bears stay at running back, even if Ashton's already gone.
Okay, let me workshop it with you. Who trades up to 10, and how far back would Chicago want to go? So we're going to talk Niners coming up later in the show.
Yep.
We know they're likely going defense. The Cowboys, we feel, are in need of another receiver to go with CD, so let's assume they go that way. The Dolphins need offensive line help to protect Tua. We don't believe that Jonathan Taylor is in any danger there in Indianapolis, so it's probably not the Colts. The Falcons are fine with Bijan Robinson. The Cardinals, James Conner's fine. The Bengals, I don't know. The Bengals are going to jump up to do that with all the money they just spent. And the Seahawks are fine running. Just trying to think, how far back do you go if you're Chicago, and which team wants to jump all the way up to be able to get whoever they want at 10?
I will just say that, again, at plus 220, if you think the Bears are taking any running back, Omarion Hampton is the second betting choice to be the second running back taken. Look at these numbers. Minus 330 that Hampton's the second running back taken. So if you want to play the Bears at plus 220 at 10, it gives you the double shot. Mm-hmm. Ashton, if he's there, and if not, do they just take Hampton at 10? Could be very, very interesting. VSiN.com right now. It's not just the NFL draft, but there's a lot of draft talk on there as well. JD, Jonathan Davis got you covered with the picks on the ice. Adam Burke with baseball. Check it out. Summer special right now through August 1st for just $59 at VSiN.com/subscribe.